You've been there, right? You ask an AI a pretty simple question, and it gives you this answer that sounds so confident, so detailed, but is just completely wrong. Well, that's what we call an AI hallucination. And today, we're going to get into why this happens, just how dangerous it can be, and the big question, can this thing ever really be fixed?
So let's just start with this bombshell of a quote from a recent OpenAI paper because it's kind of the whole story in one sentence. Hallucinations are not some simple glitch you can just patch like a normal piece of software. Nope. They are a fundamental, baked-in, mathematically inevitable feature of how these things are designed. So the question isn't if an AI will lie to you, it's why it's basically guaranteed to.
All right, so let's get right into the nuts and bolts of it. Why are these incredibly powerful systems so prone to just making stuff up out of thin air? Well, it all goes back to their core design. This right here, this gets to the heart of the whole problem, and it cuts through all the marketing hype. See, we tend to think of AI as this all-knowing brain, but that's not what it is. It's a prediction engine. When you ask it a question, it's not searching a database for a fact. It's actually asking itself a totally different question. Based on the trillions of words I've read on the internet, what is the most statistically likely word to come next? It's a master of sounding plausible, not telling the truth. And this slide just illustrates that central conflict perfectly. We expect a truth machine, right? Something that knows what it knows and, more importantly, knows what it doesn't know. But what we actually get is a plausible text generator that's been trained over and over to sound fluent and confident no matter what. It is literally rewarded for guessing, not for admitting it's clueless. And this is where the math comes in, and it's a little scary. According to Jan LeCun, this guy is one of the godfathers of AI. Every single word an AI generates has some tiny chance of being wrong. But here's the kicker. As it keeps writing, as it generates longer and longer answers, those tiny chances compound exponentially. It makes a mistake almost inevitable. And here's a great analogy for why they're trained this way. Just imagine an AI is asked a question it has no clue about, like, say, your birthday. On all those performance tests that rank these models, saying I don't know gets you 0 points, a big fat F. But just taking a wild guess, that gives it a 1 in 365 chance of being right. The entire system basically incentivizes bluffing over being honest. Okay, so now we get the why. Let's talk about the real-world impact. Because this isn't just about getting a trivia question wrong. These plausible-sounding lies, they're causing some very real and very expensive disasters. This timeline really shows a clear and kind of worrying escalation. We went from a stock market shock in 2023 to actual lawyers getting fined by judges for citing completely fabricated legal cases, to a major product launch becoming a running joke because of its terrible advice. And this trend is just continuing, with major law firms getting sanctioned well into 2025. The problem is getting more visible, not less. Let's just pause on that first one for a second. A single hallucination in a public demo for Google's AI, where it got a fact wrong about a space telescope, it wiped out an estimated $100 billion in market value. That is the price tag for one confident lie. And that $100 billion flub? It wasn't some weird one-off event. In the legal world, this is turning into a chronic, systemic problem. Researchers at Stanford have now documented over 640 times that AI-generated content, we're talking completely fake case law, has been submitted in actual court filings. This is creating chaos in a field that's supposed to be built on verifiable facts. And of course, you've probably seen the failures that became internet memes. Google's AI overviews famously told people to eat rocks, to put non-toxic glue on their pizza sauce. It even claimed Barack Obama was the first Muslim president. And in this really bizarre moment, it confidently denied what year it was. These examples are funny, sure, but they show an AI with absolutely no common sense or connection to reality. So, okay, the problem is huge, we get it. But the biggest companies in the world are throwing literally everything they have at solving it. So let's look at the main strategies they're using to try and chain these models to reality. Okay, so the three big techniques here are RAG, RLHF, and live search. Think of it like this. RAG is like giving the AI a specific, trusted textbook to read before it answers your question. RLHF is like having thousands of human teachers constantly grading the AI's answers for accuracy, saying good answer or bad answer. And grounding with live search, well, that just forces the AI to check its work against the current live internet.
And you know what? The results have been pretty staggering. I mean, just look at this chart. The average hallucination rate for these top models has absolutely plummeted from almost 22% down to less than 1%. That is a 96% reduction in just a few years. It's an absolutely monumental technical achievement. But, and this is a really, really big but, that's not the whole story. Not even close.
Because this slide puts that number into some crucial and honestly terrifying context. That sub 1% rate, that's only for general knowledge, like who was the third president. Look at the high stakes areas. For legal questions, general models are still wrong over 75% of the time. For medical stuff, it can be over 90%. So here's the key takeaway. The risk of your AI lying to you depends entirely on what you're asking it.
And now for a paradox that is seriously baffling researchers. Get this. Sometimes making the AI smarter and better at reasoning can actually make it worse at telling the truth. OpenAI's newest models, which are way better at step-by-step logic, actually hallucinate twice as often on certain tests. It seems that adding that complex reasoning creates all these new, interesting ways for the AI to get lost and just make things up. So all of this leads us to the biggest, most heated debate in the entire field right now. Given that hallucinations are a mathematical feature and that making the model smarter can sometimes totally backfire, can this problem ever truly be solved? On one side of the argument, you've got Geoffrey Hinton, literally the godfather of AI. And his take is that what we call hallucination is basically the same thing humans do. It's called confabulation. It's how we fill in the gaps in our memory. So from his point of view, it's not a bug at all. It's a necessary feature of a flexible, creative intelligence. But then on the complete other side, you have a computational linguist, Emily Bender, who famously called these things stochastic parrots. Her argument is that since the models have zero actual understanding of the world, no concept of truth, no real intent to communicate, they're just mindlessly mimicking patterns they've seen. And from that perspective, they can never be truly reliable because they don't even know what truth is. So where does all this leave us, the actual users? Well, the takeaway for right now is pretty clear. First, trust, but always verify. Anything important needs a human in the loop, period. Second, remember that the domain matters immensely. Be extra cautious with legal, medical, or coding advice. And finally, remember that the newest, flashiest, most advanced model isn't necessarily the most truthful one. Which leaves us with this final, critical question. We are building our future on a technology that is fundamentally designed to be plausible, not truthful. Yeah, it's getting better, but that last 1% of error might just be impossible to get rid of. So as we weave this stuff deeper and deeper into our lives, we all have to ask ourselves, how much trust is too much?